They say the sharpest betrayals don't arrive with warning. They arrive with perfume on the collar, a smile too wide, and the sting of a slap that echoes longer than pain. In the fragile world of trust, it takes only seconds to destroy what took years to build. Mistress arrogantly slaps pregnant wife, but Millionaire immediately teaches her a brutal lesson. Whispered warnings about the downfall of a good marriage almost always come too late, and by then hearts are already broken. Inside a sun-drenched villa on the outskirts of San Diego, an unsuspecting pregnant wife would soon learn that betrayal lurked behind even the most polished smiles. Within these modern, glass-lined halls, secrets collided, forcing everyone to reveal their true colors. The moment a brazen mistress raised her hand against an innocent mother-to-be, the stage was set for a dramatic showdown that would shake their entire world. Little did they know, a formidable billionaire sister was about to unleash her unstoppable wrath. Naomi Bennett stood in the expansive foyer of the Bennett estate, her hand gently resting on the swell of her belly. She was nearly 5 months pregnant, and each passing day brought a fresh wave of hope and anticipation. The entire house, adorned with minimalist sculptures and gleaming travertine floors, was a testament to the tech wealth and legacy of the Bennett family. Yet despite the elegance around her, Naomi felt uneasy. She could not shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Julian Bennett, her husband, emerged from his study with a grim expression. The tension in the house felt as thick as the stagnant August air outside. For the last few weeks, there had been strange phone calls at odd hours, suspicious text messages that Julian dismissed with a forced laugh, and the unsettling notion that a presence lingered in the shadows of their relationship. Whenever Naomi asked him directly if something was amiss, he offered a gentle smile that failed to reach his eyes. He would pat her on the shoulder and say, "You're overthinking, sweetheart. I promise everything is fine." On this particular day, Naomi's heart pulsed faster than usual. The baby, as though sharing its mother's intuition, gave a strong kick in protest. The sound of footsteps, heavy, purposeful, echoed through the hallway. Something about that stride felt out of place. She parted her lips to call out Julian's name, but before she could utter a sound, another figure stepped in. Camille Rhodes, with sharp hazel eyes and a model's poise, glided in like she owned the place. She was tall, elegantly dressed in a slim, fitted black dress that accentuated her figure, and sporting an arrogant smirk that suggested she harbored no fear of discovery. Her lipstick was a daring scarlet that matched the color of her perfectly manicured nails. There was a mocking confidence in her posture, as though she had already declared victory over a war Naomi did not even know had begun. "Julian, you told me I could drop by whenever I wanted," Camille announced, letting the echo of her heels strike the polished stone floor, "but you never mentioned your little wife would be home today." Naomi stiffened. The audacity in Camille's voice, the condescending glance up and down Naomi's body, said all she needed to know. In that moment, something inside Naomi broke. The illusions of trust she'd clung to over the past several months shattered around her. She had naively hoped her suspicions were unfounded. She had prayed that Julian would never betray her, especially while she was carrying their child. Julian came rushing out of his study, face pale. He shot Naomi an imploring look, as though silently pleading for her forgiveness, even before she could process the full weight of what was happening. "Camille, I told you to wait for me to call," he hissed through gritted teeth. "This is not a good time." A wicked gleam shone in Camille's eyes. She ignored Julian's warning and sauntered deeper into the foyer, her heels snapping against the floor, her attention flicking from the sweeping staircase to the modern chandelier overhead, and finally to Naomi's face. "I can't imagine a better time," she retorted, her voice dripping with an arrogance that set every nerve in Naomi's body on edge. "After all, I only want what's best for your husband." Naomi tried to maintain her composure, but she couldn't stop her eyes from brimming with tears. "Julian," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is this? Who is she?" Camille let out a short, cruel laugh. "I'm Camille Rhodes, darling. I'm Julian's confidant," she said, carefully choosing her words. She cast a sideways glance at Julian, who clutched his hair in desperation. "He promised to help me launch my new fashion boutique. We've been collaborating for quite a while now." The baby kicked again, a frantic reminder that Naomi had more than just her own life to protect. She straightened her spine, stepping forward to confront the woman who had intruded upon her home and her marriage. "If you want his help with your business, you can set up an appointment at his office." Her voice was surprisingly firm, even though she felt a tempest raging within her. "You don't belong here." Camille's lips curled. "You think you can talk to me like that?" She took a measured step toward Naomi, eyes narrowed. "Don't try to play the saint, Naomi. You might be pregnant, but that doesn't make you untouchable." Julian tried to step between them. "Stop it, Camille. This is not what we agreed." But Camille silenced him with a glare so venomous it could have stripped paint from the walls. Then she turned her full attention to Naomi, who stood as resolute as she could. "Your husband and I have shared intimate secrets, far more intimate than you might realize. Did he tell you about our trip to Vancouver last month? Or the weekend we spent at that private villa in Tulum?" Naomi's heart thundered in her chest. She didn't want to believe a word of it, yet the evidence spoke louder than her desperate hopes. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she refused to crumble. "How could you do this?" she asked, her voice breaking. Camille's scornful grin widened. "He's mine now," she said simply. And then, without warning, her hand whipped across Naomi's cheek with a force that echoed in the silent hall. The crack of the slap reverberated along the walls, freezing Julian in place. Time seemed to stop. Naomi's face stung, tears spilling freely. She raised a trembling hand to her cheek. Camille stood there, chest heaving, her face contorted with righteous entitlement, and Naomi understood in that single, heartbreaking instant that her world had changed forever. She felt Julian's arms catch her from behind as her legs wobbled. The baby's movement was urgent now, as though protesting the violent intrusion. She could barely see through the tears, but she could hear Camille's mocking laughter as the echo of the slap settled. It was replaced by a profound, soul-crushing silence, a hush that draped the foyer like a shroud. And the memory of that slap hung in the air, etching itself into the foundation of the Bennett household. Deep down, Naomi knew she would never be the same again. The villa, once her safe haven, now seemed like a foreign battlefield strewn with the debris of her trust. Yet in that swirling maelstrom of confusion and hurt, a single question flared inside Naomi's mind, giving her an ember of hope. What will Sienna do when she finds out? Sienna Bennett was a name whispered with both reverence and envy across international business circles. Rumored to be one of the savviest tech moguls in the country, Sienna had established an empire that stretched from Silicon Valley to the bustling financial districts of Hong Kong. She'd been featured in major publications, Forbes, Business Insider, and even the Wall Street Journal, all praising her extraordinary ability to transform failing companies into multi-million-dollar success stories. When Sienna walked into a boardroom, bankers, investors, and CEOs alike held their breath. Despite all her success, Sienna rarely flaunted her wealth. She kept a residence in Aspen and another on the outskirts of Paris, but rarely stayed in either place for long. She was constantly on the move, attending conferences, spearheading philanthropic initiatives, or striking deals that made global headlines. Yet if there was one thing Sienna Bennett would never ignore, it was a call from her family. When Naomi first met Julian, Sienna had offered her blessings with cautious optimism. She was protective of her younger sister, having watched Naomi navigate heartbreak and betrayal in past relationships. Sienna had done her best to reassure herself that Julian was different, that he would provide the stability Naomi so deeply craved. The day Naomi announced her pregnancy, Sienna flew back to San Diego to personally congratulate her sister, showering her with extravagant gifts and heartfelt advice. She had even told Julian, "You'd better take care of her. She's the only sister I have." But Sienna had no inkling of the storm brewing inside the Bennett household. So when Naomi, tears in her eyes and voice trembling, called Sienna late that evening, the billionaire sister's entire schedule cleared instantly. She canceled an overseas trip to Tokyo for an important tech summit and booked a direct flight back to San Diego within the hour. The pilot, accustomed to Sienna's sudden changes in itinerary, found a way to get her private jet airborne by sunrise. Sienna spent the flight tapping away at her laptop, but her mind kept drifting to Naomi's broken sobs over the phone. the words she'd managed to squeeze out. "I can't believe it's happening, Sienna." She slapped me, and Julian, he just stood there. Just hearing that Julian had been cheating with Camille Rhodes had unleashed a fury Sienna hadn't felt in years. As the jet soared through the clouds, Sienna couldn't help but reflect on the time she had tried to caution Naomi about the cunning circles of wealth and power. She remembered how Naomi had insisted Julian wasn't like other men, that his heart was pure and his love unshakable. Now, Sienna fought to control her mounting rage. How dare he cheat on my pregnant sister? How dare that mistress raise a hand against Naomi? Her fists tightened around the pen she was holding, nearly snapping it. She didn't know who Camille Rhodes was, but if that woman thought she could assault a Bennett and face no consequences, she was in for a brutal reckoning. When Sienna arrived in San Diego, the first thing she learned was that Naomi had been taken to a hospital. The stress of the confrontation, coupled with the force of the slap, had led to complications. Fearing for the baby's safety, Julian had rushed Naomi to a private medical facility where Dr. Elaine Harper, one of the top OB-GYNs in the city, was examining her. Sienna wasted no time, dressed in a sleek black pantsuit. Her hair pulled back into a tight chignon, Sienna strode into the hospital lobby. A swarm of paparazzi, somehow tipped off to her arrival, snapped photos, but Sienna brushed them aside without a word. Her top priority was her sister, not the headlines. She found Julian pacing outside Naomi's private room, face drawn and gray. He looked as though he hadn't slept in days. The second he saw Sienna, he rushed forward with trembling hands. "Sienna, But Sienna wasn't interested in hearing him out. She slapped him across the face, not with the reckless hatred Camille had shown, but with a deliberate stinging force that snapped his head back. Gasps rippled through the corridor, but Sienna didn't care. "That's for betraying my sister," she said in a voice that was ice-cold. The kind of tone that even seasoned board members knew better than to challenge. "If Naomi loses this baby, I swear, Julian, your life will never be the same." Julian rubbed his stinging cheek, tears brimming in his eyes. "I never meant for any of this to happen," he croaked. Camille, she was just—" "Shut up," Sienna ordered, stepping closer. She wasn't tall, but the fury radiating from her made her look like a giant. "We'll talk later, after I see my sister." Pushing past him, Sienna entered Naomi's room. The space was serene, filled with the low hum of machines monitoring Naomi's vitals. Naomi lay there, pale and fragile-looking, her hand resting protectively over her belly. When she saw Sienna, her eyes welled up. "I'm sorry you had to fly all this way," she whispered. "I know how busy you are." Sienna's heart ached. She strode over and gently clasped Naomi's hand. "Don't be sorry," she said softly, leaning in to plant a kiss on her sister's forehead. "I should be the one apologizing for not being here. I'm going to make this right, Naomi." Elaine Harper stepped in, a kind woman with a reassuring presence. "Miss Bennett is stable, for now," she reported in a hushed tone. "We managed to calm her vitals and the baby is showing normal signs, but we have to keep her under observation. Stress is the worst thing for her right now." Sienna nodded her understanding and let out a slow breath. Anger still simmered in her chest, but she knew she had to be calm, for Naomi's sake. She gave her sister's hand a squeeze. "I'll take care of everything," she whispered. "Just focus on getting better. Don't you worry about Julian or Camille." Naomi opened her mouth to speak, but the weight of her heartbreak was too heavy. Tears dripped onto the hospital gown, and Sienna gently wiped them away. "Rest," Sienna insisted. "I've got this." Outside, Julian waited with his hands clasped together, as though he were about to face a firing squad. Sienna exited the room, shutting the door behind her. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the corridor felt like a battlefield. "Talk," Sienna said, folding her arms. "I want every detail, and I want it now." Julian sagged against the wall, burying his face in his hands. "I made a mistake," he began, voice trembling. "Camille Rhodes is a friend of a friend. She approached me about investing in her fashion boutique, and I thought it was just business at first. But then one thing led to another, and I can't even explain it. I never thought I'd do something like this to Naomi." Sienna's steely gaze never wavered. "This is beyond a mistake. You cheated on your pregnant wife." Her voice rose slightly, making a passing nurse snap her head around in alarm. "You've humiliated her, and you let that woman assault her in your own home. Let me be crystal clear, Julian. If you think you can slip out of this with a measly apology, you're sorely mistaken. Julian swallowed hard. I love Naomi, Sienna. I do. I just got lost. Camille was so persistent. She threatened to go public with everything if I didn't keep meeting her demands. I was worried about the scandal hurting Naomi and the baby. Don't spin this, Sienna cut him off. You made your bed. Now you have to deal with the consequences. For now, stay away from Naomi. Unless you can be absolutely certain you won't stress her out. If you upset her any further, so help me, Julian. He nodded miserably, like a schoolboy caught stealing. I'll do whatever it takes, he said. Oh, I assure you, you will, Sienna snapped. This is not over. Later that day, Sienna left the hospital and drove directly to the Bennett estate. As she entered, the silence in the vast corridors felt oppressive, as though even the house was holding its breath after the day's explosive drama. Sienna scanned the rooms, her steps echoing against the marble. Finally, she found Camille Rhodes seated in the drawing room, leisurely sipping a cup of tea as though nothing were amiss. Camille looked up, a smirk crossing her face. She set her cup down on the mahogany table with a precise clink. Sienna Bennett, I presume? I've heard so much about you, she purred, feigning politeness. Sienna did not return the smile. She positioned herself across from Camille, arms crossed, stance wide. Leave, she ordered, voice low. Whatever game you think you're playing, it ends now. But Camille only laughed, a high, mocking sound that reverberated off the polished walls. What an entrance. And here I was expecting some gracious conversation. Are you sure you don't want tea? This is a delightful Earl Grey. Sienna's jaw tightened. She was not used to her authority being challenged. You have 5 minutes to pack up and get out of my sister's home. If you don't, I'll have security escort you out. And trust me, I'm not one to bluff. Camille leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs with regal indifference. Now why would I leave willingly? Julian wants me here, and if you haven't heard, we've been quite close. A flicker of rage flashed across Sienna's eyes. She hadn't come here to debate. I know exactly who you are, and what you've done. You assaulted my pregnant sister. If you think there won't be legal repercussions, you're dead wrong. I've already contacted one of the best attorneys in the state. Daniel Wright. He's more than ready to file assault charges. The mention of legal action made Camille's smirk falter, but only for a second. She quickly recovered, flipping her hair with a casual shrug. You want to take me to court? Fine, go ahead. But I'm sure the media will have a field day once I reveal the details of Julian's indiscretions. By the time I'm done, your family name will be in tatters. Unfazed, Sienna leaned in, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You think you can blackmail me with scandal? You might want to do your research on how I handle blackmailers. Camille's posture stiffened. We'll see, she said, though her confidence seemed slightly rattled. You can't protect Julian from the choices he's made. He came to me, Sienna, and if your precious sister was more exciting, maybe he wouldn't have strayed in the first place. Sienna's vision blurred with white-hot anger. She had heard enough. With a quick gesture, she pulled out her phone. Ethan Cole, she said into it, naming the head of her personal security team stationed outside. Come in. A moment later, Ethan Cole, a towering, broad-shouldered man, entered the drawing room with 2 other security officers. Their presence, swift and imposing, made Camille's eyes widen in real fear. Sienna pointed at Camille. Miss Rhodes is leaving. Immediately, ensure she doesn't take any property that isn't hers. Then escort her off the premises. Camille's outrage ignited. She jumped to her feet, her face twisted in fury. You can't do this, she spat. Julian said I could stay. Sienna's calm smile was more chilling than any roar. Julian doesn't have a say anymore. This is my sister's house, and her name is on the deed. If you want to fight in court, be my guest, but I'm done playing this ridiculous game. Now get out. Ethan and the 2 officers advanced. Camille grabbed her purse in a huff, throwing a lethal glare at Sienna as she stomped toward the door. This isn't over, she shouted, her voice echoing down the grand hallway. I'm counting on it, Sienna replied under her breath. And just like that, Camille was gone. Booted from the Bennett estate in a humiliating display she would not soon forget. Sienna exhaled slowly, a momentary rush of satisfaction warming her veins. Yet she knew the real battle was just beginning. Camille was not the type to walk away gracefully, and Julian's betrayal had fractured Naomi's heart. There was still a mountain of anguish to scale before the situation could be set right, if it could be set right at all. Over the following days, Naomi remained in the hospital under careful observation. Sienna visited daily, bringing gourmet lunches, stacks of magazines, and even a few business journals to keep Naomi's mind occupied. Despite these efforts, Naomi struggled to find peace. Her eyes still held the haunted look of someone who had watched her dreams disintegrate before her very eyes. Meanwhile, Julian was caught in a whirlwind. He was forced to address mounting inquiries from both the press and his own family, who were scandalized by rumors swirling around Camille Rhodes. Some tabloids caught wind that the mistress had been unceremoniously thrown out of the Bennett estate, fueling sensational headlines like "Heir to Bennett Empire in shocking love triangle" and "Billionaire sister intervenes in scandalous affair." In the midst of this media frenzy, Sienna maintained a measured, almost surgical approach. She had her lawyers file a protective order against Camille for the assault on Naomi, ensuring that Camille would face charges if she attempted contact. But Sienna knew that legal measures alone wouldn't extinguish Camille's thirst for vengeance. If Camille had damaging information about Julian, she could still wreak havoc by going public. And while Sienna was fiercely protective of her sister, she also recognized the precarious balance between saving Naomi's sanity and crushing Camille's schemes. One afternoon, Sienna sat at Naomi's bedside. Naomi stared at her reflection in a small handheld mirror, unconsciously touching the faint bruise that remained on her cheek. "I keep thinking this is some nightmare I'll wake up from," Naomi said softly. "Julian was so kind to me at the beginning. Whip, I don't know this person he's turned into," Naomi said. Sienna sighed, reaching over to take the mirror from Naomi's hand. "He made a terrible mistake. I can't speak for him, but I'll make sure you're protected no matter what." Naomi nodded, tears glistening. "Thank you for everything. I don't know what I'd do without you." Just then, Julian walked in, carrying a bouquet of white lilies. He approached cautiously, as though expecting Sienna to pounce. "Naomi," he said, voice thick with regret. "I wanted to check on you." Sienna rose to her feet, sizing him up with narrowed eyes. He shot her a pleading look. "May I have a moment alone with my wife?" Naomi's eyes flicked to Sienna. After a short, tense pause, Naomi nodded. "Just a few minutes." Sienna hesitated but finally stepped out of the room. She lingered by the door, arms folded, prepared to intervene if Julian caused the slightest distress. Inside, Julian set the lilies on a side table. "They're your favorite," he said quietly. "I remember how you used to say their fragrance reminded you of spring mornings on your grandmother's farm." Naomi looked at the flowers without emotion. "I can't forget what you've done. But this baby, it's ours. I'm only thinking of how to keep my stress down for the child's sake." Julian rubbed his neck, anguish etched into his features. "I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. What I did was inexcusable. Camille was never supposed to mean anything. She blackmailed me, threatened to ruin my career and yours if I didn't comply. I was weak. I should have come to you, told you the truth." Naomi's face softened for a moment, but she quickly hardened again. "I don't want to talk about Camille," she said. "And I'm tired. I need rest." He bowed his head. "Okay, I'll go. But please know, I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." When Sienna re-entered, she found Naomi with tears rolling silently down her cheeks. The exhaustion in her sister's eyes spoke volumes. Sienna understood that Julian's remorse might be genuine, but the damage was severe. Naomi would need time, and possibly more than time, to heal from this betrayal. No sooner had Sienna gotten a semblance of control over the situation than a shocking development plunged the entire fiasco into deeper chaos. One morning, Sienna's personal assistant, Carmen Reed, burst into Sienna's penthouse suite at the Four Seasons Hotel with panic in her eyes. "Sienna, we have an issue," Carmen said, nearly breathless. "Camille Rhodes just released a tell-all interview online." Sienna's fingers flew over her laptop keyboard, calling up the website in question. There it was, a sensational tabloid piece. Camille Rhodes reveals the ugly truth behind Julian Bennett's marriage. In the article, Camille spewed vile accusations. claiming Naomi was a manipulative spouse who ignored Julian's needs, that Naomi drove Julian into her arms, and even that Naomi had plotted to trap Julian with the pregnancy. Sienna could feel her anger spike with every venomous sentence. Camille twisted the narrative expertly, painting herself as the misunderstood victim. Worse yet, she hinted at possessing intimate photos and potential recordings of her time with Julian, threatening to release them unless justice was served. It was vile blackmail disguised as a public appeal. Gritting her teeth, Sienna took a calming breath and called Daniel Wright, her family's lead attorney. He answered on the first ring. "I've seen the article," Daniel said immediately. "We can pursue defamation charges, but the burden of proof can be tricky. She's using suggestive language rather than outright stating facts. We might tie her up in court, but if she truly has compromising material on Julian, this could get messier." Sienna's mind spun. She needed a more direct approach, something that would neutralize Camille's threats immediately. "Let's consider an injunction to prevent her from releasing any alleged recordings until the assault case is resolved," she suggested. Daniel hesitated. "We can try, but it'll depend on the judge. These matters can be complicated if Camille claims it's her personal property." "Do it anyway," Sienna ordered. "Time is of the essence." As she hung up, Sienna realized she was stepping onto a battlefield that demanded more than just lawyers and gag orders. Camille was determined to destroy Naomi's reputation, as well as Sienna's. Sienna's phone buzzed again, this time with calls from journalists, business colleagues, and even friends from her philanthropic circles. Everyone wanted a comment on the scandal. If Sienna stayed silent too long, the narrative Camille was spinning would become the dominant one. Summoning her assistant, Sienna said, "Carmen, schedule a press conference. Keep it private, just the major outlets. I'm going to address this head-on." Carmen's eyes widened. "Are you sure that's wise? The media is feasting on this." Sienna squared her shoulders. "I don't care. If Camille thinks she can bully my sister into silence, she has another thing coming." That afternoon, Sienna held a closed-door press briefing at an upscale event hall in downtown San Diego. The atmosphere hummed with tension as selected journalists and reporters shuffled into the room, cameras at the ready. They knew Sienna Bennett was not someone who casually addressed the media. Whatever she was about to say, it would be significant. Wearing a composed expression, Sienna took the podium. She briefly acknowledged the crowd before diving into her statement. "In recent days, there have been disturbing allegations made by Miss Dexler, Camille Rhodes, against my sister Naomi Bennett and my brother-in-law, Julian Bennett. I want to be absolutely clear. These allegations are nothing more than baseless fabrications intended to harm a pregnant woman and our family during a vulnerable time." She paused, letting the flash of cameras pop in the silence. "My sister was the victim of a physical assault perpetrated by Miss Rhodes in the Bennett family home. We have pursued legal actions accordingly. Miss Rhodes is attempting to deflect from her wrongdoing by making false claims about Naomi's character. Let it be known that we will not be intimidated, nor will we allow these lies to stand unchallenged. We have every intention of pursuing all necessary legal remedies to protect Naomi and our family's reputation." A handful of reporters shouted questions as soon as Sienna finished her statement. "Miss Bennett, do you deny that Julian Bennett was having an affair with Camille Rhodes?" one asked. Sienna held up her hand. "The details of Julian's relationship will be handled privately. My focus is on Naomi's well-being and ensuring Miss Rhodes faces the legal consequences for her assault. Thank you for your time." She stepped away from the podium, ignoring the avalanche of follow-up queries. Carmen escorted her out, and they slipped into a waiting SUV, heading straight back to the hospital to be with Naomi. As the car glided through the city, Naomi sat in her hospital bed. A tablet balanced on her lap. Curiosity had gotten the better of her, and she had begun scrolling through news coverage and social media reactions to the press conference. The headlines were mixed, some commending Sienna's poise, others speculating on the scandal. But it was the comments that pierced Naomi's heart. "She's playing the victim," one read. "Typical rich wife trying to control the narrative," another sneered. A few accused her of faking the pregnancy's complications for sympathy. Naomi's fingers tightened around the device. Her chest rose and fell, heavy with disbelief. How could people be so cruel? Didn't they see how much pain she was in? She turned off the screen abruptly, feeling as if the walls were closing in. Her throat tightened, a lump rising as she blinked back tears. Sienna's defense had been fierce and unwavering. But even so, Naomi couldn't silence the doubts creeping in. What if the world believed Camille? What if all her suffering was just fodder for public entertainment? A deep ache settled in her chest, not just from betrayal, but from the terrifying sense that she was alone in it. Sienna felt a measure of relief. She had publicly defended her sister and set the record straight about Camille's lies. Yet deep down, she knew this was just the opening salvo in a larger war. The press conference sparked a new wave of media speculation. While some outlets were sympathetic to Naomi, others salivated over the sensational angle of the affair, devoting hour-long talk show segments to dissecting the love triangle. It was a feeding frenzy that threatened to overshadow any attempt to remain dignified. True to form, Camille Rhodes did not remain silent. She took to social media, posting cryptic messages about Julian's alleged confessions and teasing the release of damning evidence if Sienna continued to smear her name. The public, eagerly awaiting any scandalous twist, lapped it up. In private, Julian was a wreck. He spent nights in the guest wing of the Bennett estate, haunted by the shame of his betrayal. He tried repeatedly to apologize to Naomi in the hospital, bringing flowers and baby gifts, but the emotional chasm between them felt insurmountable. Naomi accepted his visits only because Dr. Elaine Harper advised that hostility would raise her stress levels. She remained heartbreakingly distant, speaking to Julian with the kind of politeness reserved for a stranger. Sienna, however, kept busy. She was determined to expose Camille for the manipulative predator she was. Through her vast network, Sienna discovered that Camille had a history of latching onto wealthy men, extracting money, and then destroying their reputations when they tried to break free. Camille had grown adept at using tabloids, paparazzi, and online leaks to bolster her claims and keep her name in the spotlight. Each new morsel of scandal gave her leverage, threatening her victims with more publicity if they dared cross her. Armed with this knowledge, Sienna dug deeper. She hired private investigators who traced Camille's financial transactions, phone records, and previous lawsuits filed by or against her. Slowly, a pattern emerged, a chain of heartbreak and financial extortion that linked Camille to at least 3 other affluent men. 2 of them had faced humiliating public shaming after Camille's allegations. In each case, the men had settled out of court for large sums of money, presumably to keep Camille quiet. Sienna smiled grimly when the evidence was laid out before her. With proper presentation, they could discredit Camille publicly and illustrate that her vendetta against Julian was part of a larger scheme. This was the ammunition Sienna needed to counteract Camille's malicious threats. But Sienna also recognized one crucial weakness: Julian's own guilt. If Camille truly possessed incriminating photos, Julian might be humiliated. The baby's future could be overshadowed by a very public scandal. Sienna could handle corporate warfare and paparazzi harassment, but she refused to let her unborn niece or nephew bear the brunt of a media circus. Just when Sienna believed she had a handle on how to dismantle Camille's smear campaign, fate dealt another card. A detective named Gregory Townend from the San Diego Police Department arrived at the Bennett estate with surprising news. He asked to speak privately with Sienna in Julian's study. Townend explained the purpose of his visit. "Ms. Bennett, I'm investigating some missing persons and suspicious overdoses connected to Miss Camille Rhodes," he said. "I understand your family is currently in a legal dispute with her. We've come across evidence that suggests she's been supplying certain types of narcotics to high-profile individuals. We believe some of her associates have died under suspicious circumstances." A chill ran down Sienna's spine. Are you suggesting that Camille is involved in something more nefarious than blackmail?" Townend pressed his lips together. "We don't have definitive proof yet, but we suspect she's part of a ring that provides illicit drugs to wealthy clients. Some of these clients might have overdosed, but the circumstances are unclear. We have reason to believe Ms. Rhodes is more dangerous than previously thought." Sienna exhaled slowly, absorbing this new revelation. "So how can I help?" "We're looking for financial records, phone logs, anything that might tie Miss Rhodes to these activities. If you have investigators, they might have stumbled upon something relevant to our inquiry. We're also interested in Miss Rhodes's recent threats and any communications she might have sent, particularly references to settlements or hush money." Sienna hesitated. Sharing her private investigator's findings with law enforcement was a significant step, and one that could escalate the conflict. But if Camille was truly involved in criminal activities beyond blackmail, then cooperating with the police could be a powerful way to neutralize her. "I'll have my team gather what we have," Sienna said at last, her voice resolute. "If it helps protect my family, and potentially save others from whatever Camille is planning, then I'm in." Townend gave her a firm nod. "Thank you. This could be a turning point." Little did Sienna know how right he was. By aligning with the police investigation, she was about to push Camille into a corner, prompting a response that would be more vicious and personal than she'd ever anticipated. Within a week of Sienna sharing her evidence with Detective Townend, Camille's fury unleashed like a dam bursting. One quiet evening, as Sienna returned from the hospital, Carmen met her in the mansion's foyer, eyes wide with alarm. "Sienna, there's a video," Carmen gasped, thrusting an iPad into her boss's hands. "What kind of video?" Sienna asked, but her question was answered the moment she looked at the screen. It was surveillance footage from an undisclosed location showing Julian, visibly intoxicated, in a compromising situation with Camille. The timestamp indicated it was months old, around the time Camille claimed their affair began. Sienna's stomach churned. The visuals were graphic enough to be extremely damaging, not just to Julian, but to Naomi's peace of mind. "No one has posted it publicly yet," Carmen said, but an anonymous email threatened to leak it to every media outlet in the city. "If you don't drop the charges against Miss Rhodes." Sienna inhaled sharply, grappling with a surge of rage and frustration. This was Camille's blackmail at its ugliest. She was desperate to escape criminal scrutiny and would drag everyone through the mud if her demands weren't met. Steadying herself, Sienna placed the iPad on a nearby table. "Forward the email to Daniel Wright," she instructed Carmen, "and get me Julian, now." Moments later, Julian shuffled into the foyer. He looked at Sienna questioningly, until she showed him the footage. His face went ashen. I had no idea she recorded this," Julian said in a hollow voice. "I never would have. God, what am I going to do if this gets out?" Sienna fixed him with a cold stare. "You should have thought of that before you destroyed my sister's trust." Julian sank to his knees, burying his face in his hands. "I deserve this, but Naomi, she doesn't deserve any of it." Meanwhile, in the quiet of her hospital room, Naomi sat staring at the ceiling, the sound of the monitor steady beside her. She hadn't seen the footage, but she didn't need to. The silence between Julian and Sienna told her enough. The betrayal had taken on a new, undeniable shape. She curled slightly on her side, wrapping an arm around her belly. Every movement of the baby was a reminder of what she had to protect, of what had been risked. A silent question echoed inside her. How much more would she have to endure before she could breathe again? Sienna's anger faltered. Despite her fury, she recognized that Julian was grappling with genuine remorse. "Stand up," she said. "We don't have time for self-pity. We need to figure out a plan. If we give in to Camille, she'll keep extorting us. We need to hold our ground." Julian rose shakily, tears brimming. "I'll do whatever you say." Sienna studied him, then took a careful breath. The police suspect Camille is involved in drug trafficking, possibly linked to deaths. She's more than a mistress on a power trip. She's a criminal who'll do anything to save her own skin. This is bigger than just saving face for you. If she's cornered, she might do worse. Julian swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" Sienna's gaze hardened. "We expose her first." Determined to end the madness, Sienna devised a strategy. She invited Detective Townend to the mansion for a private meeting with Julian and Daniel Wright. The plan was to lure Camille into a controlled setting under the guise of negotiating a payoff to drop the charges and hush the scandal. The second Camille incriminated herself, the police would have grounds for immediate arrest. Julian was visibly nervous, fearful that any slip-up might make the situation worse, but Sienna insisted. "This is our chance," she told him. "If Camille records this meeting, it won't matter. We'll be wiretapping her right back, with the police's full support. Once we have proof she's blackmailing you and distributing illegal substances, Townend can take her down." That evening, Julian called Camille. He spun a story of desperation, claiming that Sienna was forcing his hand, but he would be willing to secretly pay Camille off to protect Naomi and the baby. As expected, Camille took the bait. She demanded a face-to-face meeting at a secluded Airbnb on the outskirts of San Diego, specifying that Julian should come alone. However, Sienna and Detective Townend had every intention of being close by, armed with recording devices and a small security team. The Airbnb would be rigged with hidden cameras. Everything would be documented and ready for law enforcement to intervene. On the appointed night, Julian arrived first. The cabin-like Airbnb sat at the end of a winding road, surrounded by tall pines. Julian's heart pounded as he waited inside, fiddling anxiously with the hidden microphone taped beneath his shirt collar. He thought about Naomi, about the baby, about how his life had spiraled out of control. "Let this work," he prayed silently. "Let this be over." The door swung open, and Camille strutted in, eyes cold and calculating. She closed the door behind her, scanning the small living room suspiciously. "Are you alone?" she demanded. Julian forced a shaky grin. "Yes. Sienna still thinks I'm meeting with my lawyers. I had to sneak out to do this." Camille tossed her purse onto the couch, crossing her arms. "So how much are we talking about?" Julian cleared his throat. "I can wire you $2 million tonight, but you have to destroy every piece of evidence you have against me. No more interviews, no more videos." Camille arched an eyebrow, a dangerous gleam in her eye. $2 million? Do I look that cheap to you? The footage I have is worth way more than that. And let's not forget the potential drug charges. You and your precious Sienna can't pin anything on me if we settle, so I want $5 million, minimum. Julian swallowed, his hands trembling. "Fine," he managed to say, trying to keep his voice steady, "but you have to hand over everything you've got. Every recording, every photo, every document." Camille's lips curled into a smug smile. She pulled out a small USB stick from her purse, dangling it like a prize. "This has everything," she taunted. "No copies, no backups, just this. Give me the money, and it's yours. Then I'm out of your life for good." Julian glanced toward the fireplace, where one hidden camera was placed. He hoped the device was capturing every word. "How do I know I can trust you?" he asked. "You don't," Camille replied with a dark laugh. "But do you really have a choice?" His jaw clenched. "All right, let's do it." As he spoke, Julian's mind raced. What if this didn't work? What if Camille had other hidden files or allies watching from a distance? His palms were sweating and his breath felt shallow. He wasn't just trying to save himself. He was trying to redeem a tiny piece of the man Naomi once believed in. This moment had to count. In that moment, a sudden bang shattered the tense silence. The door burst open, revealing Detective Townend and two officers, guns drawn. "Police! Don't move!" Townend shouted. Camille whirled around, eyes wild with panic. She saw Julian stepping back, his phone out, and realized she had walked straight into a trap. "You bastard!" she screamed, flinging the USB stick at him in a blind rage. It hit his shoulder and clattered to the floor. Townend and the officers lunged, pinning Camille's arms behind her back. She shrieked curses, twisting and kicking as they forced her to the ground. "You can't do this. You have no proof," Townend smirked grimly. "We have you on tape demanding $5 million in exchange for destroying incriminating evidence. That's extortion. Plus you assaulted Miss Bennett, which is already in the system, and we have ample evidence suggesting your involvement in drug trafficking. You've got nowhere to run, Miss Rhodes." Camille's eyes glistened with hatred. She spat at Julian, but the officers kept her restrained. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure your life is ruined." Julian ignored the venom, stepping backward, tears brimming. The weight of what just happened pressed down on him. His knees were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer emotional exhaustion. For a moment, all he could hear was Naomi's voice in his memory, the way she used to say his name when she trusted him. Would she ever say it that way again? Sienna, who had been monitoring the scene from just outside, entered. Her gaze met Camille's with cold triumph. "This is for Naomi," Sienna thought silently. In a flurry of curses and threats, Camille was hauled away. Townend scooped up the USB stick, handing it to Sienna in a sealed evidence bag. "We'll analyze it. But based on everything we already have, Miss Rhodes is facing substantial prison time. Julian sank onto the couch, hands shaking. Sienna placed a hand on his shoulder, the tension of the night overwhelming them both. "It's over," she whispered, almost unable to believe it herself. But Julian knew better than to assume everything was resolved. He had still betrayed Naomi, and no number of arrests or legal victories would erase that fact. The real fight for Naomi's trust was only just beginning. News of Camille Rhodes's arrest exploded across the media. While the details of the undercover operation were kept under wraps, headlines blared variations of "Camille Rhodes taken into custody." "Shocking new twist in Bennett scandal. Blackmail and illicit activities. Mistress exposed." For a brief moment, public sentiment swayed in favor of Naomi. The narrative turned from jilted wife overshadowed by a flamboyant mistress to victimized mother-to-be targeted by a dangerous con artist. Sienna's name surfaced too, praised for her swift action and unwavering resolve. All the while, Naomi remained in the hospital. Her condition was improving, but her heart was still shattered. When she finally felt stable enough to leave, Sienna arranged for a private car to take her to a serene retreat in Lake Crest, far from the prying eyes of reporters. A lush estate with sweeping lawns and a lakeside view awaited her, a temporary haven where she could convalesce in peace. Sienna visited daily, ensuring Naomi had the best medical care, nutrition, and even therapy sessions with a renowned counselor, Dr. Sarah Thompson. "You have to heal emotionally just as much as physically," Sienna told her gently. Naomi nodded, stroking her belly. "The baby's okay, thank God. But I feel numb. Julian's betrayal, it's like I'm caught between heartbreak and relief that Camille's gone." Sienna sat beside her on a plush sofa overlooking the water. "You can take all the time you need to sort through your feelings," she said. "No one is rushing you." Just then, Julian arrived. He had requested to see Naomi, and she had reluctantly agreed. He walked in hesitantly, a single white rose in hand. "Naomi," he said, voice thick with emotion, "you look better." Naomi regarded him coolly. "I'm physically better, yes." He extended the rose, placing it on a side table when she made no move to take it. "I'm glad Camille is behind bars. I'm sorry I put you through all of this. You didn't deserve any of it." Naomi inhaled deeply, trying to keep her composure. "I can't pretend everything's okay. You broke my trust in the worst possible way." Julian bowed his head. "I know. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you, if you'll let me. But if you can't forgive me, I understand." Tears glinted in Naomi's eyes, but she fought them back. "I don't know what I want yet. You promised to be faithful, to protect me. And you failed." Her voice shook slightly. "I need time, Julian. Time to think about our marriage, our child, and whether we can have a future together." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I'll give you whatever space you need." Sienna, watching from the corner of the room, felt a tug of empathy. Julian was remorseful. But that wouldn't magically mend Naomi's shattered heart. Healing would require patience, commitment, and honesty, things Julian had to prove he was capable of giving. Days turned into weeks. Weeks passed, and life began to settle into a new normal. The scandal, while not forgotten, waned in the public eye, replaced by fresh news cycles. Camille Rhodes remained in custody, facing multiple charges that even her high-priced attorneys struggled to dismiss. Sienna spent part of each day managing her business empire remotely. Mergers, acquisitions, and philanthropic initiatives continued, but she delegated more responsibilities to her executive team, prioritizing Naomi's recovery. Naomi, for her part, embraced therapy with Dr. Thompson. She also began planning for the baby, picking out nursery themes and browsing baby clothes online. The simple act of imagining the child's future helped her channel her energy into something hopeful. During this period, Julian wrote daily letters to Naomi. He didn't text or call often, respecting her need for space. But every evening, a handwritten note arrived at the Lake Crest estate. He confessed his regrets, his love, and his desire to be a better man. Sometimes Naomi read them, sometimes she didn't. Yet the consistent sincerity in his words slowly chipped away at the wall she'd built around her heart. One late afternoon, Naomi sat on a wicker chair by the lake. The sky was streaked with oranges and pinks, the water shimmering in the dying light. She held Julian's latest letter, unopened. Sienna quietly approached, sitting on the chair next to her. "Another one?" Sienna asked softly, nodding to the envelope. Naomi nodded. He doesn't give up. Sienna hesitated. You'll have to decide, eventually, whether you want a life with him or not. Naomi gazed out at the water, her thoughts distant. He hurt me, Sienna, but he also saved me in the end. He stood up to Camille, helped put her behind bars, and there was a time, before all this, when we were genuinely happy. I don't know if that can ever come back, but I do care about him. Sienna's expression softened. You don't owe anyone forgiveness, but if it's what you truly want, then it's your choice. I'll support you, no matter what. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. She reached over and squeezed Sienna's hand. I wouldn't have survived this without you. Thank you for defending me, for believing in me, for everything. They sat there in silence, the soft splash of water against the shore lulling them into calm. In that peaceful setting, Naomi found the courage to open Julian's letter. She read his heartfelt words, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time in a long while, Naomi felt the stirrings of hope. A few days later, she asked Julian to visit her at the Lake Crest estate. He arrived unsure of what to expect. To his surprise, Naomi greeted him outside, her hand resting on her growing belly, the late afternoon sun framing her in a warm glow. I read your letters, she said, voice trembling. All of them. Julian nodded, his hands clasped in front of him as though he were afraid to move. I meant every word. I'm so sorry. I messed things up. Naomi studied his face, the lines of remorse, the desperation etched into every angle. She remembered the laughter they once shared, the gentle comfort of his arms, the whispered promises of a life together. Is that life completely gone? She asked herself. Or could they rebuild? She took a breath, summoning the courage to speak. I'm not sure I'll ever forget what happened, but I want this baby to have a father. I'm willing to try counseling, see if we can find a way forward. Slowly, on my terms. Julian's eyes shone with tears. I'll do whatever it takes. They didn't embrace right away. Instead, Naomi led him along a paved path by the lake. They walked in tentative silence, the wind rustling through the trees. It was symbolic, a slow step toward rebuilding trust, acknowledging the pain, but daring to hope for healing. In the weeks that followed, Naomi and Julian attended couples therapy, working through the layers of hurt and betrayal. It was a difficult process, emotional and raw, but it also illuminated the cracks that had formed in their relationship long before Camille entered the picture. Naomi learned how to voice her fears and needs. Julian confronted his insecurities, the ones that had led him to stray. Throughout it all, Sienna remained a steadfast pillar of support. She balanced her philanthropic events and corporate responsibilities with daily check-ins. She even invited Naomi and Julian to family dinners, creating opportunities for them to reconnect under her watchful eye. No one pushed for rushed reconciliation. It was a gradual, fragile mending of hearts. By the end of Naomi's 7th month of pregnancy, her health had significantly improved. The baby was thriving, and the doctors assured her that her stress levels were manageable. Though the memory of Camille's slap still lingered, a bruise on her soul rather than her skin, Naomi had reclaimed her sense of security. The Bennett estate, once the site of heartbreak, was renovated to symbolize a fresh start. Sienna oversaw the project, ensuring that old memories were literally painted over and replaced with a more hopeful aesthetic. The criminal case against Camille was ongoing, but the evidence was overwhelming. Facing near certain conviction, she tried to negotiate a plea deal. Neither Sienna nor Naomi attended those hearings. They had chosen to move forward, focusing on the new life that would soon join their family. One crisp morning in December, Naomi went into labor. Julian held her hand through every contraction, whispering words of encouragement and wiping sweat from her brow. Sienna waited anxiously in the hospital corridor, along with a handful of close friends. After hours of intense effort, Dr. Hay, Sarah Thompson emerged with a triumphant smile. Congratulations, you have a healthy baby girl. Tears of relief and joy flooded Sienna's eyes. She rushed into the delivery room, where Naomi cradled a tiny bundle in her arms, Julian by her side. The baby's soft cries echoed, filling them with awe. Sienna approached, gently touching the newborn's downy head. She's perfect, Sienna whispered. Naomi smiled through tears, her eyes flicking to Julian, then back to Sienna. We're naming her Alexandra Grace Bennett, she said. Sienna, I want her middle name Grace to remind us of the grace we found in forgiveness and resilience." Julian, gazing at his child, nodded in gratitude. "And we want you to be her godmother," he said, his voice cracking. "We wouldn't have made it through this without you." Emotion welled in Sienna's chest. She placed a tender kiss on Alexandra's forehead. "I'd be honored," she whispered. The moment felt like a culmination of all their suffering, courage and love poured into one fragile, new life. In the weeks that followed, Naomi and Julian marveled at their daughter's every coup and stretch. They chose to attend regular therapy sessions, building a stronger foundation for their family. While the scars of betrayal might never fully vanish, they were learning to navigate life's storms with humility and honesty. Sienna, too, found a renewed perspective. She poured herself into philanthropic work, aimed at supporting battered women and pregnant mothers who had suffered domestic strife. She channeled her resources into creating safe havens and offering legal aid, determined that no woman should have to endure what Naomi had. And so, in a grand but quiet way, the Bennett family began its next chapter. Gone were the illusions of perfection, replaced by hard-earned truths about loyalty, love, and the fierce bonds of sisterhood. In their opulent world, the simplest blessing, a healthy baby, became the grandest treasure of all. Through tears, trials, and an unbreakable sisterly bond, Naomi and Sienna reminded everyone that no matter how dark the storm, a new dawn would always break, carrying hope on its golden rays. So that's where our story ends, or perhaps begins again. Hey, our amazing friends, are you still here with us? If you've stayed this long, then something in Naomi's journey must have stirred something in your heart too, right? Maybe it reminded you of how fragile trust can be, or how deep the wounds run when it's broken. But here's the truth. We are more than the pain we've endured. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it, that matters." Naomi didn't choose betrayal, but she chose how to rise after it. She didn't crumble, she rebuilt. And Sienna? She reminded us that protecting what you love sometimes means fighting the battles others are too broken to face. These aren't just characters, they're reflections of the strength within all of us. So now, take a moment. There's no right or wrong way to see this story. Just feel it, breathe it in, and carry its lessons with you. If this touched you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and hit subscribe. Who knows, the next story might be the one that brings you the healing you didn't know you needed. Until then, stay strong and stay true.